The bruises bloom purple and yellow across Tommy's forearm, like a map of violence I cannot read. He flinches when I touch them, pulling away, and something inside me fractures at the sight of my 6-year-old son, shrinking from my gentle hands. "Who did this to you?" I ask, but he shakes his head, those brown eyes that mirror his father's filling with tears he refuses to shed. He will not speak. He will not name his tormentor, and I am left with nothing but fury and fear churning together in my chest until I can barely breathe. The apartment feels smaller tonight, the walls pressing in as Tommy retreats to his room and closes the door with a soft click that sounds like an accusation. I did not protect him. I was working a double shift at the diner while someone hurt my child and I was not there. My hands shake as I scroll through my phone, searching for the number of Marcus Webb, father of the boy Tommy mentioned last week. The one who calls him names, the one who shoves him on the playground. My fingers fly across the screen before I can stop myself, before I can think, before I can be the reasonable mother I pretend to be. "Stay away from my son, or I will make you regret it." I send it. Immediately regret floods through me, but it is too late now. The message sits there, delivered, a threat I meant with every fiber of my desperate heart. I expect silence. I expect to be ignored. What I do not expect is a reply within 2 minutes. "Then tell me why he is crying." I stare at the words. Cold. Controlled. Nothing like the angry father I anticipated. This is wrong. Something is wrong. I check the number and ice spreads through my veins. This is not Marcus Webb. This is a number I do not recognize, a contact I must have created by mistake, a wrong digit that has sent my threatening message to a complete stranger. Before I can type an apology, before I can explain, another message appears. I see him, outside the corner store. He is sitting alone. The world stops. My son is in his bedroom. My son is safe behind that closed door. But even as I think it, I am moving, running down the narrow hallway, throwing open his door to find an empty room. The window is open. The fire escape ladder still swinging. Tommy is gone. He ran away, and I did not hear him leave because I was too consumed with my own rage to notice my child slipping away into the October darkness. Someone is watching him. Someone I accidentally threatened. Someone who knows exactly where my son is right now while I stand here paralyzed with terror. I grab my keys. I grab my phone. I run. Now please take a moment and subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from. And what time is it? It is always fascinating to see where these stories get all around the world. Thank you. The corner store glows fluorescent against the October darkness as I round the block at a dead sprint, my lungs burning, my heart slamming against my ribs like it wants to escape my chest. I see him immediately. Tommy, my baby, sitting on the concrete curb with his knees pulled tight to his chest, his small body curled into itself like he is trying to disappear. Relief crashes through me so violently that my legs nearly buckle. But the relief lasts only a heartbeat because I see the black car idling across the street, sleek and expensive and wrong in this neighborhood where rust and dents mark every vehicle. The driver door opens. A man emerges. Tall, broad shoulders beneath a dark suit that costs more than 3 months of my rent. He moves with the fluid precision of someone who knows exactly how dangerous he is. Eyes like cold steel catch the streetlight as he crosses toward my son, with something in his hand, and every maternal instinct I possess ignites into pure primal terror. "Tommy, run!" I scream, but my voice comes out strangled, desperate, and my son does not move. He looks up at the approaching stranger with red-rimmed eyes and tear-stained cheeks, and he does not run. The man crouches beside him, and I see now what he holds. A tissue. White. Simple. He offers it to Tommy with a gesture that seems almost gentle, and my son takes it, wipes his face, and something passes between them that I cannot name. I reach them seconds later, grabbing Tommy's arm and yanking him behind me so hard he stumbles. I plant myself between my child and this stranger, my body a shield, my hands trembling with adrenaline and rage. The man rises slowly, unfolding to his full height, and I have to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. He is handsome in the way that predators are beautiful. Sharp jaw, dark hair swept back from a face that reveals nothing. Those steel eyes study me with an intensity that makes my skin prickle with awareness I refuse to acknowledge. Your text was interesting, he says, and his voice is low, measured, each word precisely placed like he has never spoken carelessly in his life. The sound of it rolls through me, settling somewhere in my stomach where fear and something else coil together. Who are you? I demand, but my voice wavers and we both hear it. He reaches into his jacket, and I flinch, but he only produces a card. Holds it out to me between two fingers. I snatch it from him, glancing down at the thick cream paper. Alexander Sinclair. No title, no company. Just a name and a phone number in elegant black script. The name means nothing to me, but the way he carries himself means everything. This is a man accustomed to power, to obedience, to getting exactly what he wants. Next time, he says, and a ghost of something that might be amusement flickers across his features. Check who you are threatening. He turns and walks back to his car without waiting for a response, without hurrying, without looking back. The engine purrs to life. The black car pulls away into the night. I stand on the sidewalk clutching his card in my shaking hand while Tommy presses against my back, and I know with absolute certainty that my wrong number has just changed everything. I wait until Tommy falls asleep before I open my laptop, the glow of the screen harsh against the darkness of our tiny living room. My fingers hover over the keyboard as I type his name into the search bar. Alexander Sinclair. The results load and my blood turns to ice in my veins. Crime boss. Suspected kingpin. Controls half the city's underground operations according to articles that read like fever dreams of violence and power. I scroll through photographs of him at charity galas, at business openings, always surrounded by men in dark suits, always with those steel eyes that reveal nothing, never convicted, never charged. Untouchable, the reporters write, as if the word itself carries a warning. I threatened this man. I sent a message promising to make him regret crossing me, and he could have killed me for it. He could have hurt Tommy. Instead, he offered my son a tissue and watched him cry with something that almost looked like concern. I delete the text thread with shaking hands, erasing every trace of my foolish mistake, but I know deletion changes nothing. He has my number. He knows where we live. He knows my son's face. I close the laptop and sit in the darkness, listening to Tommy breathe through the thin walls, counting each inhale like a prayer. The knock comes at 7 the next evening. I open the door to find a delivery driver holding a box far too elegant for this building, wrapped in thick cream paper with a ribbon that probably costs more than my tips from a Friday night shift. School supplies, he says, and leaves before I can refuse. I carry the box inside with trembling hands and set it on the kitchen counter. Tommy appears beside me, drawn by curiosity, his bruised arm hidden beneath long sleeves even though the apartment is warm. Inside, I find markers in every color imaginable, notebooks with leather covers soft as butter, pencils that gleam like they have never known the inside of a child's messy backpack. A note rests on top, the handwriting bold and precise. Every child deserves protection. I want to throw it all away. I want to march outside and hurl this beautiful poison into the dumpster where it belongs. But Tommy reaches past me, his small fingers closing around a set of watercolor paints, and his eyes light up with something I have not seen in weeks. Joy. Pure and simple and untainted by whatever violence brought these gifts to our door. I cannot take this from him. I let him keep the supplies, but I do not acknowledge the gift, do not say thank you into the empty air where I know somehow he is listening. The next morning I walk Tommy to the bus stop, and that is when I see it. The black car, parked across the street, engine silent, windows tinted so dark I cannot see inside. But I know who waits there. I know who watches. Alexander Sinclair has not forgotten me, and I have no idea what he wants. I have had enough of being watched. 3 days of that black car appearing wherever I go. 3 days of feeling eyes on my back as I walk Tommy to school. 3 days of jumping at shadows and checking locks twice before I can sleep. This morning I decide it ends. I march across the street before my courage can fail me, my fists clenched at my sides, my jaw set so tight my teeth ache. The tinted window rolls down before I reach the door and a man looks up at me with patient eyes. He is older than Alexander, perhaps 40, with silver threading through his dark hair and a face that has seen violence but wears it quietly. "Henry Drummond," he says, as if we are meeting at a dinner party and not on a cracked sidewalk outside my crumbling apartment building. "Mr. Sinclair's associate. I do not care who he is. I care that he leaves. Tell your boss I am not interested in whatever game he is playing. Tell him to stop watching me. Tell him to stay away from my son." Henry's expression does not change. "Mr. Sinclair requests a meeting, Miss Bennet. Nothing more. Your safety is his concern." I laugh and the sound is bitter, broken. My safety. A crime lord is concerned about my safety. That is rich. That is absurd. I turn to walk away, but his voice follows me, soft and certain. "Mr. Sinclair does not make requests twice." I pretend I do not hear. I pretend the words do not settle into my bones like a warning. That night I bolt the door and wedge a chair beneath the handle and tell myself I am being paranoid. Tommy falls asleep clutching his new markers, and I stand at his bedroom door, watching his chest rise and fall, counting his breaths like I did when he was a baby. When I was terrified he would simply stop existing if I looked away. The crash comes at 2 in the morning. I jolt awake to the sound of splintering wood and heavy footsteps, and my heart stops, simply stops, suspended in my chest like a stone. 3 men burst through my shattered door wearing black masks, their voices harsh and demanding. "Where is the file? Give us the file." I do not know what they mean. I tell them this with my hands raised, with tears streaming down my face. But they do not believe me. They tear through my apartment, ripping open drawers, slashing cushions, while I scream for them to stop, and somewhere behind me, Tommy cries out in terror. I push him into the closet. "Hide, baby. Do not come out. Do not make a sound." The largest man grabs my arm, twists it behind my back, and pain explodes through my shoulder. "Tell us where it is, or we hurt the boy." The door crashes inward a second time, and suddenly Alexander is there. Alexander with blood already on his knuckles. Alexander with death in those steel eyes. Violence erupts around me like a storm breaking, fists and bodies and the wet sound of impact. And when the masked men flee into the night, Alexander stands in the wreckage of my home, breathing hard, watching me. "Now will you meet with me?" I say no. I tell him I would rather sleep in the wreckage of my apartment than accept protection from a man who deals in violence and shadows, and I mean every word until I look at Tommy. My son stands in the doorway of his bedroom, clutching his stuffed bear to his chest, his eyes wide and glassy with tears he is too scared to shed, his small body trembling so hard I can see it from across the room. He watched masked men destroy our home. He heard me scream. He understands now that the world is not safe and that his mother cannot protect him alone. Alexander sees the moment my resolve cracks. He does not gloat. He simply waits while I gather what remains of our belongings into 2 small bags, while I hold Tommy's hand and walk out of the only home he has ever known, while I climb into the black car that has haunted my steps for days and let it carry us into the unknown. The drive takes 45 minutes. We leave the city behind and enter a world of winding roads and ancient trees, of iron gates that open at Alexander's approach and close behind us with a finality that makes my stomach clench. The estate rises from the darkness like something out of a fever dream. Stone walls, peaked roofs, Windows that glow warm against the cold night. It is beautiful. It is terrifying. Guards patrol the perimeter with earpieces and watchful eyes, their presence a constant reminder that this sanctuary exists because danger lurks outside its walls. Henry shows us to our rooms, a suite larger than my entire apartment, with a bedroom for Tommy connected to mine by a shared bathroom, with silk sheets and fresh flowers, and a view of gardens that stretch toward the horizon. I feel like a prisoner despite the luxury. The gilded bars of this cage do not make it less confining. But Tommy, my sweet, traumatized boy who has not smiled in days, begins to heal in ways I did not expect. By the third morning, he has befriended Maria, the head cook, who lets him help stir batter and lick spoons. By the fifth day, he explores the gardens with one of the younger guards, who shows him how to identify different birds by their songs. He laughs again. The sound breaks something open inside me, some wall I built to keep my fear contained, and I cry in the shower where no one can hear. Alexander keeps his distance. I catch glimpses of him moving through the halls, entering rooms that lock behind him, conducting business I do not want to understand. But I notice other things too. I notice him standing at the library window, watching Tommy chase butterflies through the rose garden. I notice the way his expression shifts, the steel softening into something raw and aching, something that looks like longing for a life he cannot have. I wonder what wounds hide behind that cold exterior. I wonder what made him into this. I wonder why I care. I find them in the library on the 9th day. Tommy sits cross-legged on a leather chair far too large for his small frame. A chessboard balanced on the ottoman between him and Alexander, who leans forward with his elbows on his knees, explaining how the night moves in its strange L-shaped pattern. My son laughs. The sound hits me like a physical blow because I have not heard that particular laugh in weeks, not since before the bruises, not since before our world shattered and reformed into something unrecognizable. Alexander looks up when I enter, and something flickers across his face, perhaps guilt, perhaps defiance, before it smooths into his usual mask of controlled neutrality. Tommy does not notice the tension crackling between us. He is too busy moving his knight, counting squares with his finger, proud of himself for remembering the pattern. I wait until Maria comes to collect him for lunch before I unleash the fury that has been building in my chest since I walked through that door. "How dare you?" The words come out low and shaking, more dangerous than if I had screamed them. "How dare you spend time with my son without asking me? How dare you read to him and teach him games and make him laugh as if you have any right to be part of his life?" Alexander does not defend himself. He stands there absorbing my anger like a stone wall absorbing rain, letting it wash over him without resistance. This makes me angrier somehow, his refusal to fight back, his calm acceptance of my accusations. "Tommy already lost his father," I continue, my voice cracking on the word. "He was 3 years old when David died. He does not remember him. He only knows that other children have fathers, and he does not. He does not need another man who will disappear when this is over. He does not need to attach himself to someone who lives in violence and shadows. He does not need you." The silence stretches between us, heavy and suffocating. Then Alexander speaks, and his voice is different than I have ever heard it, stripped of its usual control, raw and bleeding at the edges. "I had a brother. His name was Michael. He was 7 years old, Tommy's age, when a rival family decided to send my father a message. They took him from his school. They killed him. They left his body where we would find it. I feel the blood drain from my face. I open my mouth, but no words come." Alexander continues, his eyes fixed on some point beyond me, some memory I cannot see. "I was 24. Old enough to have protected him. Old enough to have seen the threat coming. But I was arrogant. I thought my father's power made us untouchable. I thought our name was a shield. Michael paid for my arrogance with his life. He finally meets my gaze, and I see it now. The grief he carries like chains wrapped around his chest. the guilt that has shaped every choice he has made since that day. I am not trying to replace anyone, he says. I am not trying to be Tommy's father. I am trying to protect what I could not protect before. I am trying to make sure no other child pays for the sins of men like me. I understand loss. I understand the desperate need to rewrite history through present actions. I lost David to a drunk driver 3 years ago, and I still reach for him in sleep. Perhaps Alexander and I are not so different after all. Perhaps we are both just broken people trying to keep the ones we love from breaking too. Henry finds us in the garden on the 12th day, his face grave in a way that makes my stomach drop before he speaks a single word. He asks Alexander to come inside. Private matter. Alexander glances at me and something passes between us, some silent agreement forged in the aftermath of his confession, and he tells Henry to speak freely. I have earned the right to hear this. The words land like an unexpected gift, an acknowledgement that I am no longer just a burden to be protected, but someone whose presence matters. Henry hesitates only a moment before delivering news that rewrites everything I thought I understood about my situation. The men who broke into my apartment work for Robert Ashworth. The name means nothing to me, but I watch Alexander's expression harden into something lethal, his jaw tightening, his hands curling into fists at his sides. Ashworth is a rival, Henry explains. Older territory, old grudges. He has been looking for leverage against Alexander for years, and he believes he has finally found it. The accountant who handled Alexander's finances for a decade disappeared 6 months ago with encrypted files containing enough evidence to destroy both empires. Ashworth wants those files. He traced the accountant's last known address to my apartment building, to the unit directly above mine, and when he found it empty, he made an assumption. He assumed the accountant passed the files to a neighbor. He assumed that neighbor was me. I am an innocent caught in a war I did not know existed, targeted for information I do not possess, endangered by a man I have never met because I had the misfortune of living in the wrong building at the wrong time. The realization should terrify me. Instead, it ignites something closer to rage. My son's safety has been compromised over files and territory, and the petty power struggles of men who treat human lives like chess pieces. Alexander promises to handle Ashworth. He speaks the words with cold certainty, with the confidence of a man accustomed to eliminating threats, and I believe him. But Ashworth moves faster than either of us anticipated. My phone buzzes that evening while Tommy eats dinner with Maria in the kitchen. An unknown number. I open the message and the world tilts sideways. Photos. Tommy walking into school. Tommy on the playground. Tommy eating lunch at a table near the window. Close shots. Recent shots. Taken within the last 2 days despite the guards Alexander stationed at every entrance. The message beneath the photos reads, "Give us the files or lose him," and the phone slips from my fingers, and I cannot breathe, cannot think, cannot do anything except collapse against the wall as sobs tear through my chest. Alexander finds me there, crumpled on the marble floor, shaking so violently my teeth chatter. He does not ask what happened. He simply kneels beside me and pulls me into his arms and holds me against his chest while I fall apart. His heartbeat drums steady against my ear. His hand strokes my hair with surprising gentleness. He smells like sandalwood and something darker, and I cling to him like he is the only solid thing in a world gone liquid with fear. This is the first time he has touched me with tenderness rather than necessity. The first time I have let him. And even through my terror I feel it. The electricity, the pull, the dangerous gravity drawing me toward a man I should flee from. He whispers promises into my hair. He will protect Tommy. He will destroy anyone who threatens us. He will burn Ashworth's empire to ash. I believe every word. That belief terrifies me most of all. Alexander triples the security around Tommy's school on day 14. Armed men in unmarked cars. Plainclothes guards positioned at every entrance. A surveillance team monitoring the perimeter around the clock. He shows me the operation on a tablet screen, explains the protocols, the backup plans, the contingencies for every scenario his strategists could imagine. I nod and pretend this makes me feel safe, but the truth is, nothing feels safe anymore. Not when photographs of my son eating lunch arrived on my phone from someone close enough to count the freckles on his nose. I tell him I need to quit my job at the diner. The words taste like surrender. For 3 years, that job kept a roof over our heads, kept food on our table, kept me believing I could handle anything life threw at us. Now I cannot leave this fortress without risking my son's life, and the independence I clung to so fiercely dissolves like sugar in rain. Alexander watches me carefully when I make this announcement. He does not gloat or remind me that he offered financial support from the beginning. Instead, he asks if I would consider a project. His personal library needs organizing, thousands of volumes in no particular order, accumulated over years without system or logic. A distraction, he calls it. Something to occupy my mind while his people handle Ashworth. I accept because the alternative is pacing the halls of this beautiful prison, counting the hours until I can hold Tommy again each afternoon. The library becomes my sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling shelves in a room that smells of leather and old paper, and something distinctly Alexander. I begin categorizing. Fiction here, history there, philosophy in the corner, business text near the window where the light falls strongest. It takes me 3 days to notice the pattern. Mixed among the expected titles for a man in his position, the books on strategy and economics and law, I find others. Child psychology texts with spines still stiff from newness, guides to helping children process grief, books about trauma and resilience, and age-appropriate ways to discuss difficult topics, educational theory, developmental milestones, how to talk to kids about death. My hands tremble as I pull volume after volume from shelves, checking publication dates, finding receipts tucked between pages. All purchased within the last month. All purchased after Tommy and I arrived. Alexander has been studying my son. Not as a target or a tool, but as a wounded child who needs understanding. He has been researching how to help Tommy process what he has witnessed, what he has lost, what he continues to endure. The realization cracks something open inside my chest. That evening I find him in his study, and I do not plan what happens next. I simply start talking. I tell him about David, about the phone call from the hospital, about identifying his body while Tommy waited with a neighbor who promised Mommy would be home soon. I tell him about the bakery I dreamed of opening, the recipes I collected, the business plan I drafted before a positive pregnancy test redirected my entire future. He listens without interruption. When I finish, he tells me about growing up hungry, about a father who built an empire through blood, and a mother who died before she could see what her sons became. About choosing power because powerlessness killed everyone he loved. We talk until the fire burns to embers. About loss, about fear, about the impossible calculus of protecting the people who matter most in a world determined to take them away. Something fragile takes root between us, unnamed, unacknowledged, terrifying in its tenderness. The attack comes on day 17 when we least expect it. Tommy has a dental appointment across town, a routine checkup scheduled months before our world collapsed, and Alexander insists on accompanying us personally rather than delegating to his security team. We take an armored vehicle with Henry driving and 2 escort cars flanking us front and back. I almost feel normal sitting in the back seat with Tommy between us, listening to him chatter about the tooth fairy and whether she accepts teeth extracted by dentists or only naturally lost ones. Alexander answers with complete seriousness, explaining the fairy's comprehensive dental policy, and watching him engage with my son's absurdity does something dangerous to my heart. The first bullet shatters the rear window before I hear the gunshot. Glass explodes inward and I scream, throwing myself over Tommy, feeling Alexander's body cover us both as Henry accelerates so violently The tires shriek against pavement. More shots punch through metal. The escort cars return fire. Tommy whimpers beneath me, his small hands clutching my shirt, and I cannot comfort him because I cannot breathe, cannot think beyond the deafening percussion of violence surrounding us. Alexander shifts his weight, and I feel warmth spreading against my arm. Wet, wrong, blood, his blood. The chase ends somewhere I cannot track, the assailants falling behind or disabled by our escorts. And when the vehicle finally stops in an underground garage, Tommy is crying, and Alexander is pressing his palm against his upper arm where fabric has torn and flesh has opened in an ugly red smile. Henry rushes us inside through passages I have never seen, and we emerge in a medical room where a man who asks no questions cleans the wound with steady hands. A graze, he pronounces. Superficial. Lucky. I do not feel lucky. I feel shattered. Alexander dismisses everyone once the bandage is secured. Tommy has been taken to Maria for cookies and comfort, and we are alone. And my hands shake so violently I cannot hold the cloth I am using to wipe blood from his skin. He takes my wrists gently, stills me. I look up and his face is inches away, so close I can see the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the dark flecks in his gray eyes, the slight unevenness of his breath. "Why do you care so much?" I whisper. The question has lived in my chest for days, growing heavier with each small kindness, each protective gesture, each moment he treats my son like something precious rather than collateral. "You know why," he answers. And then his mouth is on mine. The kiss is not gentle. It claims, demands. His uninjured hand tangles in my hair, and I grip his shoulders and we devour each other like starving things finally permitted to feast. He tastes like copper and coffee and something darker, something addictive, and I want more. Want everything. Want him despite every rational objection screaming through my blood. When we finally break apart, I am trembling for entirely new reasons. Guilt follows immediately, hot and suffocating. I have kissed a criminal, a killer, a man whose hands have done unspeakable things. But those same hands shielded my son from bullets today. Those same hands have never touched me with anything but reverence. Right and wrong dissolve into meaningless abstractions when weighed against the simple truth of his mouth on mine. Charlotte arrives on day 19, and I weep at the sight of her familiar face. My best friend since college, the woman who held my hand through David's funeral, who brought casseroles for months after and never once made me feel pitied for accepting them. Alexander permits the visit after his security team conducts a background check that Charlotte laughs about, calling it excessive, calling him paranoid, not understanding that paranoia has kept us alive. We sit in the garden while Tommy plays nearby and I tell her everything. The wrong number, the threats, the photographs of my son, the attack that left Alexander bleeding, the kiss that left me questioning every moral certainty I ever held. Charlotte listens with wide eyes and sympathetic noises and squeezes my hand at all the right moments. She tells me I am brave. She tells me I am doing what any mother would do. She tells me Alexander sounds like a complicated man capable of genuine feeling despite his profession. I drink in her validation like water after drought, desperate for someone outside this fortress to confirm I have not lost my mind entirely. She stays for dinner, charms Tommy with silly jokes, compliments Maria's cooking, asks intelligent questions about Alexander's art collection that make him almost smile. When she hugs me goodbye, she whispers that everything will be okay, and I believe her because I need to believe something. That night, I cannot sleep. The kiss replays endlessly behind my closed eyes, Alexander's mouth demanding and tender simultaneously, his wounded arm forgotten in the urgency of finally touching after weeks of circling each other like wary animals. I wander the halls in bare feet, seeking water or distraction, or perhaps something I cannot name, and I hear Charlotte's voice drifting from a room I thought empty. She speaks quietly, but the words carry in the midnight stillness. She describes the guard rotation schedule, The location of the security office. Tommy's bedroom on the second floor east wing. She provides Alexander's daily patterns, when he takes calls, when he meets with Henry, when he is most vulnerable. She mentions a price, a substantial one. She thanks someone named Robert for the opportunity. The floor tilts beneath me. Charlotte. My Charlotte. The woman who cried at my wedding and brought soup when Tommy had the flu and swore she would always protect us. Selling us to the man who wants my son dead. I confront her before she can end the call. Her face shifts through surprise to calculation to something cold I have never seen in 9 years of friendship. She does not apologize. She explains. Ashworth pays better than her administrative job. She has debts I never knew about. She saw an opportunity when I first mentioned Alexander's name. You were always naive, she says, always believing the best in everyone. It made you easy to use. Alexander's men materialize before I can respond. They take her away without violence, but without gentleness either. She does not look back. I stand in the empty room, feeling the betrayal slice through every organ, every memory, every moment I thought was real now poisoned by her calculation. Everyone fails me eventually. My parents who died when I was 20. David who left me a widow at 25. Charlotte who sold my son for money. Everyone except the man I was taught to fear. I find Alexander in his study. He already knows. His people intercepted the transmission, traced the connection, confirmed what I overheard. He opens his arms without speaking, and I collapse into them, and he holds me through the darkest hours of the night, asking nothing, offering everything. His heart beats steady against my ear, while mine shatters and slowly begins to reassemble into something harder, something that trusts only him. The call comes on day 23, and it destroys everything. Henry bursts into the study where Alexander and I are reviewing security protocols, his face ashen, his composure shattered for the first time since I have known him. Tommy's school, breach, 3 guards down, the boy is gone. The words reach me through a wall of static, distorted and impossible, because this cannot be happening. We took every precaution, we stationed men at every entrance, we varied the pickup times and routes, we did everything right. But Ashworth found a way. He always finds a way. I hear screaming and realize it comes from my own throat, this raw animal sound tearing through my vocal cords until they shred and fail, until I am making noise without sound, my mouth open in silent horror. Alexander catches me before I hit the floor. His arms wrap around me, but I cannot feel them, cannot feel anything except the gaping wound where my heart used to be, the hollow space where Tommy lived inside my chest, now filled with nothing but black terror. Then Alexander releases me, and I watch him transform. The man who held me through my grief over Charlotte vanishes. The man who kissed me with desperate tenderness evaporates. What remains is something I have only glimpsed in shadows, in the careful way people flinch from his name, in the fear that lives behind Henry's loyal eyes. He becomes the monster his enemies whisper about, cold, focused, lethal beyond measure. He issues orders in a voice stripped of all humanity, deploying teams, activating contacts, calling in debts from men whose names make Henry pale. War is coming, and Alexander Sinclair intends to win it regardless of cost. I stop him before he reaches the door. I am coming with you. His refusal is immediate and absolute. Too dangerous. I will slow them down. I could be killed or worse, used as additional leverage. I tell him I do not care. I tell him my son is out there with men who will hurt him to hurt us, and I will not sit in this fortress waiting to learn if he lives or dies. I tell him I will follow on foot if he leaves me behind, that I will walk into Ashworth's territory alone and unarmed, and tear it apart with my bare hands if necessary. Something shifts in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. He sees the mother beneath the fear, the creature who will burn the world for her child, and he knows he cannot stop her any more than he could stop himself. He relents with a single sharp nod. In the car, he hands me a weapon. Small, black, heavier than I expected. He shows me the safety, the trigger, the proper grip. If anyone touches you, he says, do not hesitate. The metal feels cold against my palm, foreign, wrong. I have never held a gun. I have never imagined holding one. But I look at this instrument of death, and I understand it completely. I understand the willingness to kill, the readiness to destroy. I understand Alexander in a way I never could before, because I feel it now, this dark capability living in my own blood. I will murder anyone who stands between me and my son. I will do it without remorse. I have become someone new, someone forged in fire and terror, someone worthy of standing beside the man I love. The warehouse district rises from the darkness like a graveyard of industry, abandoned buildings with shattered windows and rusted doors, the kind of place where screams disappear into concrete and steel. Alexander's convoy moves without headlights through streets that smell of oil and decay, and something metallic that might be old blood. I count 4 vehicles, 16 men, an arsenal that would supply a small army, and still it does not feel like enough, because my son is somewhere in this labyrinth of shadows, and every second we spend approaching is a second he spends terrified and alone. The breach happens fast. Alexander's men flow through a gap in the chain-link fence like water through broken stone, silent and lethal and trained for exactly this kind of violence. Gunfire erupts from the eastern building, and I flinch at each crack, each burst, each sound that might mean death for someone on either side of this war I never asked to join. Alexander keeps me close, his hand on my arm, guiding me through chaos with the certainty of a man who has navigated worse nights than this. We enter through a side door that Henry's team has cleared, stepping over a body I refuse to look at, moving through corridors that stink of mold and fear. I hear shouting ahead, more gunfire, the thunder of boots on concrete, and beneath it all, I strain for the sound of a small voice calling for his mother. Alexander receives information through an earpiece, nods once, changes direction, pulls me down a hallway lined with doors that lead to empty rooms and broken machinery. The last door on the left, he says, and something in his voice tells me he is giving me this, letting me be the one who reaches Tommy first, who saves him, who proves that a mother's love is fiercer than any weapon these men carry. I burst through the door and freeze. Tommy sits tied to a chair, his face streaked with tears and dirt, his eyes enormous with terror that transforms into desperate hope when he sees me. Between us stands Richard Crawford, the detective whose badge should mean protection, whose oath should mean justice, whose presence here means nothing except betrayal upon betrayal in a world where corruption wears every face. He laughs when I raise my gun. "Put that down before you hurt yourself," he says. And his condescension drips like poison because he sees what I was, what I have always been, a waitress and a widow and a woman who trembles at shadows. He does not see what I have become. I fire without hesitation, and the recoil shocks through my arm, but my aim stays true, and the bullet tears through his shoulder, and he falls with a scream that sounds like every nightmare I have survived. I step over him without mercy and cut Tommy free and hold him against my chest so tightly that I feel his heartbeat synchronize with mine. Alexander appears in the doorway and sees the blood on my hands and says nothing because there is nothing to say. I have crossed into his world completely. I have become someone who bleeds and burns and kills for love, someone stronger, someone dangerous, someone finally capable of protecting what matters most. Henry refuses to let me stay, and I fight him with every exhausted muscle in my body, but Alexander's orders are absolute, and Henry has never disobeyed a direct command in all his years of service. "Take them to the safe house," Alexander told him, and those words became law the moment they left his lips. So I find myself bundled into an armored vehicle with Tommy clutched against my chest, watching through tinted glass as Alexander walks back into the warehouse where Robert Ashworth waits, where the man who orchestrated all of this terror sits like a spider at the center of his web. I scream Alexander's name, but the bulletproof glass swallows the sound and Henry drives, and Tommy trembles, and I am helpless again, dependent on others to finish what my own hands started. The safe house is a small apartment above a restaurant that smells of garlic and old wood, staffed by 2 guards who look at me with something like respect now, their eyes flickering to my blood-stained hands before they nod and take positions at the door. Henry stays with us, phone pressed to his ear, listening to reports from the warehouse that I cannot hear but can read in the shifting tension of his jaw. Time stretches into torture. I clean the blood from my fingers in a cramped bathroom while Tommy sleeps on a sagging couch, exhaustion finally claiming him after the horrors of this endless night. I stare at my reflection and do not recognize the woman who stares back, this creature with hollow eyes and steady hands, and a willingness to wound written into every line of her face. Then Henry appears in the doorway and says the words I have been dreading. It is done. He tells me what happened in fragments as we drive back through the city, dawn beginning to paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. Alexander confronted Ashworth alone in the upper office while his men secured the building. Ashworth was waiting, calm, arrogant, certain that his connections would protect him as they always had. But Alexander had something Ashworth did not expect. Evidence. Files that Henry had been compiling for months, documenting every bribe, every murder, every corruption that kept Ashworth untouchable. And then Ashworth said the words that shattered everything. Your brother screamed when he died. Did you know that? I had him killed as a message to your father, and the boy screamed and begged, and it meant nothing. Just business, nothing personal. Henry pauses here, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Alexander beat him, Henry says quietly. I thought he would kill him. I thought we would have to bury another body tonight. But he stopped. He stopped, and he called the authorities, and he handed over every piece of evidence we had gathered, and Robert Ashworth will spend the rest of his miserable life in a cell. He chose justice. He chose to be something other than the monster everyone believes him to be. He chose us. We reach the warehouse as police cars flood the scene, lights flashing red and blue against the industrial decay. I see Alexander emerge from the building, his suit torn, his face bloodied, his knuckles split and swollen. Our eyes meet across the chaos of sirens and shouting officers. I run to him without thought, without hesitation, without caring who sees or what they think. He catches me and holds me, and I feel his heart pounding against my chest, wild and alive and beating for me. We won, he whispers into my hair. It is over. I pull back to look at his battered face and I see something I have never seen there before. Peace. The days after Ashworth's arrest blur together in a haze of police interviews and medical checkups and long hours spent holding Tommy while he sleeps, my hand pressed against his back to feel each breath that proves he is alive and whole, and mine. Alexander handles everything with the quiet efficiency I have come to expect from him, his lawyers appearing like ghosts to manage the legal complexities, his doctors examining Tommy with gentle hands, his staff ensuring we want for nothing, while the world outside the estate walls churns with news of a crime empire crumbling. I watch him move through these days with a strange detachment, this man who beat another man bloody, and then chose prison over murder. This man who carries fresh wounds beneath his tailored shirts and older wounds beneath his skin. On the 4th day, he finds me in the library, standing before the window that overlooks the garden where Tommy plays with the kitchen staff's children. And he says the words I have been dreading and craving in equal measure. You can leave now. His voice is steady, but something trembles beneath it, something fragile that he is trying desperately to hide. The danger has passed. Ashworth's organization is dismantled. The police have what they need. You and Tommy can return to your apartment, your life, your future. I will ensure you have resources, protection, anything you need. But you are free. I turn to face him, and I see what this offer costs him. The way his jaw tightens and his hands clench at his sides, and his eyes shudder against whatever hope he refuses to let himself feel. He is giving me a choice. A real choice. Not the forced proximity of threat and terror, not the desperate clinging of survival. He is standing before me with his heart exposed and telling me I can walk away. I think about my old apartment with its water stains and creaking floors, and the memories of a life that belonged to someone else. I think about the waitressing job I hated, the bills I could never quite pay, the loneliness that wrapped around me every night after Tommy fell asleep. I think about normalcy and safety and obscurity and all the things I once believed I wanted. Then I think about the man before me, the blood on his hands and the books on his shelves, the way he looks at Tommy with something like wonder, the way he kissed me in the aftermath of violence and made me feel more alive than I have felt in years. There is no going back. Not to the woman who trembled at shadows. Not to the life I built from fear and survival. I have crossed too many lines, become too many things, felt too much to pretend any of it never happened. "Mama," Tommy calls from the garden, "can we stay here forever?" Alexander's breath catches. I step closer to him, close enough to see the barely healed cut above his eyebrow, close enough to smell gunpowder and soap, and something uniquely him. "We are staying," I say, and I watch his expression crack open like ice breaking in spring. Vulnerability flooding features that the world believes are carved from stone, and when he takes my hand, his fingers shake. 6 months have transformed everything and nothing. The estate that once felt like a gilded prison now wraps around me like a second skin. Its halls familiar with the echoes of Tommy's laughter. Its gardens mapped in my memory by countless afternoon walks. Its shadows no longer threatening, but protective. Tommy thrives in his new school, where the other children know nothing of warehouse shootings and kidnappings, and the violence that shaped the boy who sits among them. And I watch him grow confident and bright and whole in ways I feared the darkness might have stolen forever. My bakery occupies what was once a forgotten corner of the estate, converted by Alexander's workers into a kitchen that gleams with professional equipment and smells perpetually of vanilla and rising bread, and the local restaurants that place orders know only that Eleanor's pastries arrive fresh each morning, never questioning the armed driver who makes the deliveries. Alexander has stepped back from the worst of his business, delegating to Henry the operations that require blood and shadow, spending his days in meetings with lawyers and accountants who are slowly untangling the legitimate threads from the criminal ones. He will never be clean. I know this. The stains on his hands run too deep, soaked into the very bones of who he is and what he built. But he is trying, and trying is more than I ever expected from a man the world calls monster. Tonight the terrace glows with the soft light of early summer, fireflies beginning their ancient dance across the manicured lawn, as the sun bleeds amber and rose across the horizon. Tommy races after the glowing insects with the single-minded joy of a 6-year-old who has forgotten what fear tastes like. His laughter rising into the warm air like music I thought I would never hear again. Alexander sits beside me on the stone bench we have claimed as ours, his presence solid and warm, his hand resting on my knee with the casual intimacy of someone who no longer needs to ask permission to touch. He has been quiet tonight, something pensive lurking behind his eyes, and when he reaches into his jacket pocket, I feel my heart stutter against my ribs. The ring catches the dying light. Simple, elegant, a single diamond set in platinum, nothing ostentatious, nothing that screams of the wealth he commands. "I never thought I deserved this," he says, and his voice carries the weight of 10 years of grief, of a brother buried too young, of choices made in darkness that can never be unmade. A family, love, a future. I take the ring from his palm, feel its weight against my fingers, and I think of the woman who sent a furious text to the wrong number 6 months ago, never knowing that mistake would shatter and rebuild her entire world. "Maybe we choose what we deserve," I tell him, and I slide the ring onto my finger where it settles like it was always meant to be there. Tommy runs back to us, breathless and beaming, a firefly cupped gently in his small hands, its light pulsing against his skin. Alexander lifts him onto his lap with an ease that still catches me off guard, this tenderness from hands I have seen deal violence, and Tommy opens his palms so we can all watch the tiny creature glow. We sit together as darkness falls, the three of us, this family forged in terror and tempered in something stronger. I know danger will never fully leave our lives. I know there will be enemies and threats and shadows that reach for us in the night. But I know something else too, something that settles into my chest like a promise, like a vow, like the steady beat of Alexander's heart beneath my palm. I have found my shelter in the storm, and I am not afraid.